On January the 10th this year, the World Bank releases Global Economic Prospects, in which the organization says that sharp, long-lasting slowdown will hit developing countries hard. 2 days ago, the World Bank released another statement that warns that the years from 2020 to 2030 will be a lost decade globally as the growth levers of the past 10 years are fading away. Growth in developing countries between now and the year 2030 is predicted at just 4%. These are grim forecasts that should not be ignored. Joining me to discuss this sober global forecast and what they mean going forward is a development economist. Professor Ken Ife is out of our Abuja studios. Making the time into our studios tonight, we thank you very much, Professor. Let's hit the ground running. What's your take on this latest World Bank information regarding the slowing pace of the global economy between now and the year 2030?
Well, they stated the obvious because as you all know, what they call the speed limit. The speed limit is the average global growth rate over time. So that over the last 10 to 20 years is going to drop by about 1/3, which is 6% to 4%, as you saw, for emerging markets, and about 2.2% for the global. So that's going to go down from now till 2030, effectively dropping by 1/3. So that's what they're saying. And of course, you know that there are so many things that are contributing to this. It's not just one factor, but quite a few.
Do you think that the headwinds against global economic growth will get tougher, Professor, when you look at where we are right now? Systemic banking crisis is what we're dealing with right now. Some folks say things could get worse than 2008 global financial crisis. No one knows how this banking crisis will go. We're in the second year effectively with the war in Russia's war in Ukraine. Doesn't look like Moscow is going to blink anytime soon. The dislocations that we saw from the pandemic of 2020, put all of this together in a basket for me, shake it up, shake it down, and tell me if this outlook is real from the World Bank.
Well, if you look at the systemic banking crisis, could be more dangerous than recession because of the contagion effect and because we saw that in 2008. And luckily for Nigeria, why that was not, it wasn't, it's actually the reason for this particular collapse is lack of prudence, prudential management. Because normally, if you look at our bank, we have a reserve ratio of 32.45%, we have liquidity ratio of 30%, and then we have capital adequacy ratio of 15%. We are watching closely the non-performing loan that are holding it at about 5%. So the central bank is doing all it could to avert the kind of crisis America is seeing today. So what you have in America is high interest rate risk colliding with the failure of the bank to maintain adequate liquidity. So you have short-term deposits and you push them to long-term instruments. Now you experience a very high interest rate. People are scrambling for their money to pay for the high interest rate, and the money is not there. And then there isn't this willingness to come and do what Switzerland is doing. So America wouldn't defend you if it comes to that. So that's why they are left on their own. But normally you wouldn't have this. I mean, you could see people that are scrambling now. Ghana Central Bank is asking those with liquidity ratio, with their capital adequacy ratio of 10% to come up, to increase, and increase their capitalization. So you could see people are waking up. But it's not going to be, in my view, as bad as it was in 2008. Because in 2008, look at how Nigeria responded. We had about $62 billion in our foreign reserve. We had about $22.5 billion in excess crude account. So the bank rolled out $6 trillion. With AMCON to buy back the debts, although we've only got back about 1.5. But we had the money, but today we don't have that kind of money. So we could see that our saving grace is the tighter regime of the central bank in managing these banks and holding them to account on their macroprudential measures.
Well, the World Bank's outlook, which was released 3 days ago or 2 days ago, was talking about developing economies. Of course, if you try to put Nigeria there, even though we belong to frontier economies, by the way, it's about 4%. So where does that leave Nigeria and the rest of sub-Saharan Africa?
Well, it's still very tough to call, because you still have the aftermath of COVID-19, which has resulted in heavy borrowing and exposure. And we're still working through that. Then you have the Russian-Ukraine crisis. The impact of it is now global. And you know that it's also helped to push up the price of gas and crude as well. So that is not going away, and that is hurting and fueling inflation. Then you also seen the effect on grains, that people are having shortage of them. So all of those effects, and then the China and American Cold War, not even Cold War, trade war, is not abating. So all of these headwinds are not abating. So it's early to call, too early to call what the consequences could be. But I know that Nigeria would have to take far more stringent measures in the new administration to deal with these matters. Yeah,
we need to deal with this. We need to be prepared. So I'm just going to ask you the final question. What should be the key focus action line for Nigeria right now in the immediate and the medium term, and why should we hit the ground running in terms of, we're looking at 4%. If you look at 4% versus our versus our population growth and all that, about 2.83%. So even if we do 4% annualized basis over between our 2030s, that's just scratching the surface.
The first and foremost is, how do you promote more domestic and more foreign investment? Because the investment has to come for you to create the economic opportunity that will create the employment we are looking for. And then also, we need to invest on our human capital resources, because you could hear some of the World Bank comments that we need to invest in labor. But also, they said something, that there are possibilities that growth can increase by 1.2% if we open more doors for more women in employment. That's very interesting. And also, we know that the service sector has been singled out for growth. And that means digital economy, mainly driven by digital economy. And our digital economy has been doing very well, posting about over 16% GDP, contribution to the GDP, and the rate of about 9.8% growth rate. So that's been, and it's also influencing the banking sector, supporting the growth of the banking sector. To about 18% growth rate of the banking sector. So both of them, and they're saying, focus more on the growth that you can achieve from a social and from the service sector, predominantly the digital economy. And the other areas will include, how do you increase productivity? Of course, investment is very important. And then reducing the negative impact on infrastructure would all help to improve our productivity.
Well, yes, the World Bank in this report 2 days ago, Professor, says we should everyone should increase productivity. So we should do policies that will increase, that will boost productivity, ambitious policy push, quote unquote. That's how the central bank, that's how the World Bank put it, ambitious policy push to boost productivity. How can Nigeria boost productivity in the immediate to the medium term? Give me 1 minute on that quickly.
Well, so many parts of it. One, investment has to come in. Two, you have to reduce the input cost. Then the other, you have the labor component of the product. All of those go to improving the productivity. And then also, one other thing that they talked about, trade facilitation. Remember, according to WTO and WCO, trade facilitation costs 15% of total trade volume. Our total trade volume in Nigeria is around about $100 billion.
What sectors should we focus on quickly to grow productivity in Nigeria? That's my question.
Well, you have to invest in human capital, because that is a very critical element in improving productivity. Then you have the investment part, because anything else you want to do requires investment. And if you can't find investment, then you're on your own. But of course, there are rising input costs that are making things uncompetitive and they're affecting productivity. So those rising input costs, like energy costs and all that, they're all affecting industrial productivity. So you have human productivity, especially when it comes to service sector. You have manufacturing capacity that has to shrink because it's experiencing high input costs. You have lack of investment that is required to invest more technology and all that. All of them, you need to pay attention to all of that.
All right, well, we thank you for those reflections on this outlook, on your outlook on the latest World Bank warnings on global economy. Thank you so much. Enjoy your evening.